I've been a criminal barrister for the last decade, prosecuting and defending in criminal courts throughout England and Wales. I've been driven to write about my experiences because day in, day out, I see the criminal justice system failing those it's meant to protect. The innocent are wronged, and the guilty are allowed to walk free. I want to show you how the system is broken, who broke it, and why we should start caring. I am the Secret Barrister. Rape and sexual assault are perhaps the most difficult cases in the criminal justice system, failing both the accused and the accuser. Statistics suggest that just 17% of people report their sexual assault, and 3% of complaints result in convictions. You might have thought that mobile phones, with their digital record of our lives, would have made the investigation process easier. But the use of this information is controversial. We hear from many complainants who feel they've undergone a digital strip search, where private information is needlessly requested by the police. It was New Year's Day 2018. Emily, not her real name, was trying to make her way home after celebrating with friends. She has very little recollection of what happened that night.
Like a black wall comes down and I have no sense of where I was, what happened. I mean, it's just a nothingness, basically. I'd accidentally got into a car that wasn't my cab. And I woke up the next day. I had no idea where I was, and I was completely naked, feeling very scared because I had no idea how I'd ended up in this place. 48 hours after it happened, I came to terms with the fact that I'd been raped.
Emily fully cooperated with the police. She made a statement, she handed in the clothes she'd been wearing that night. She gave her friends details as witnesses to support her claim that she was too drunk to have consented to sex. But when the police asked for her mobile phone containing 7 years of data, she felt it was too much to ask.
They told me that if I didn't give them my phone, that they may just decide not to proceed with the case. It did feel like being violated all over again.
She asked one of the police officers, what exactly are you looking for? Can you give me examples of something that could be relevant from several years ago to this attack? And one of the things that one of the police officers said to her was essentially if there was evidence that she had once had sex with multiple men and enjoyed it, that might be evidence which will undermine her account. And that's the kind of lack of rational analysis in the way that the police seem to be approaching the mobile phone issue.
Let me emphasise, what this officer said is wrong. The law does not allow Emily's sexual history to be used in that way. Eventually, Emily reluctantly agreed to hand in her phone, but on the condition that police would only look at data within 2 weeks of the alleged crime.
His phone wasn't looked at other than the messages that were specifically between her and him at the relevant time. So they wanted to kind of examine 7 years of history about her to get a sense of who she was, but they didn't even want to look at anything that the suspect might have said within that 24-hour period that could be incriminating.
One serious problem is that the police don't even have the resources to look at all the data that is being collected from mobile phones. Something that should have helped is actually creating a backlog of cases. And this, it appears, is a main driver behind the fall in prosecutions for rape. Most cases are not being charged nor dropped. They're just sitting in a huge digital queue. Emily was told the police were dropping her case. A review would later reveal that the lack of mobile phone disclosure had been a factor.
The much easier thing for me to have done would have been to have not reported it. I mean, I shouldn't be put in a position where I was having to make the choice of either give over your private life or your rape complaint won't be pursued.
Last week, under pressure, the police scrapped the automatic request procedure for phone downloads that Emily had experienced. But this issue is not as straightforward as it might appear. Police must still ask for this information if it is a reasonable line of inquiry. The prosecution is under a legal duty to disclose any relevant material that reasonably could help the defendant's case or undermine the prosecution case. This is vital to a fair trial, for the complainant and the suspect. It's often the only lifeline an innocent defendant has. Samuel Armstrong was 23 years old and at the start of a promising career in politics. In 2016, he was working as a Conservative MP's aide in the heart of Westminster.
I met a girl. Over a few weeks, we got to know one another. Over time, I thought we were beginning to get quite close.
After a Thursday night drinking in a House of Commons bar, Sam found himself alone with the girl in a parliamentary office.
Sat down together, one thing led to another, and we started kissing and then having sex, and it was all, I thought, quite pleasant indeed.
The next day, Sam had a knock on the door.
A policeman comes up and I can still sort of see his face. He said to me, "Mr. Armstrong, we're arresting you on suspicion of rape." And they bundled me in a van, they stuck handcuffs on me. I was just shocked. It just couldn't be.
There was quite a significant impact of this case on young Sam Armstrong, and he didn't know, of course, whether he was going to receive a prison sentence. The minimum sentence would have been in the region of 5 years.
Sam's legal team wanted to see the complainant's mobile phone downloads. The police had not obtained them.
It was clear from the outset that she didn't want to hand over her phone.
The trial was set for the 11th of December 2017. With just days to go, Sam's team finally obtained the messages from her mobile phone.
The first set of messages were remarkable. Within hours of making this complaint against me, she was speaking to a PR about which paper was going to buy the story.
Once I'd seen the messages when they came through at that very late stage, I thought, that's it, we've cracked the case.
The jury found Sam not guilty on all counts.
The late disclosure of the evidence, of course, we believe had a significant effect. It may have been, if that was available earlier, the Crown would have taken a different view on the case.
It took 14 months of my life away from me. There was nothing to answer for. Yet I was left with a political career in tatters by a court process, a justice process that failed me.
There are no easy answers. There is a difficult balance between a complainant's right to privacy and the need to ensure a full and fair criminal investigation. But what is obvious is the lack of resources for the police to do this properly.
The country isn't ready for digital evidence. We don't have enough digital investigators. Until we have the resources in place and the numbers and the quality and the experience, we're going to have guilty people walking free. We're going to have people who are innocent who are dragged into the system. Until we get to grips with how to handle digital evidence, hundreds and hundreds of people are going to have to go through this.
Our appalling track record on rape is but one example of how our criminal justice system is broken. But after a decade of cuts, we can't be surprised that the system doesn't work as it should. If we're to fix it, we have to be prepared to pay for it.
The Crown Prosecution Service told us tonight, working with police, we are focused on understanding the reasons for the charging gap and are pleased to see the beginning of a reversal of this trend in the past year. However, we know there is much more to be done. Mobile devices will not be needed in every case, but when they are, there is explicit guidance that only material relevant to the particular allegation may be pursued. The police in Emily's case told us, on considering all of the available evidence, it was decided that there was not a realistic prospect of achieving a conviction. The case was subsequently reviewed twice, and the initial decision was upheld. Regarding Sam Armstrong's case, the Metropolitan Police told us our disclosure work in this case was conducted in liaison with the CPS and we are satisfied that we met all the necessary obligations. They went on to say, officers will only seek access to a digital device in an investigation of this nature when it is a reasonable line of inquiry.